About freedom.
Yes.
Thank you very much. That's a good song for today because we're continuing with the series that we've been doing during March, during the season of Lent. And the Unity spin on Lent is all about freedom and liberation. We're working with ideas from two books. One is Keep a True Lent by our own Charles Fillmore, co-founder of the Unity movement. And we're also working with a book called The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. The Unity approach to Lent can be summed up with this one paragraph that comes from the foreword to Keep a True Lent. Each one of us must be concerned with improving his own life. We must learn to deny our selfish impulses and be obedient to impulses of brotherly love. When we withdraw our attention, interest, and support from the false and the unworthy, this is true fasting. When we give that same attention, interest, and support to the enduring good, we are feasting on the things of spirit, and this is true prayer. We're fasting from any limited, self-centered way of looking at the world. We're giving up the false and the unworthy, and instead we're focusing on the true, the good, and the beautiful. So today, we're drawing on the wisdom of the four agreements. This time, the second agreement, which is, don't take anything personally. Don't take anything personally. I hear a little laughter out there. It's like, is that really possible? Maybe we're thinking of some examples. That's good. That's good. This agreement, not taking things personally, helps us to get in touch with, from that quote from Keep a True Lent, helps us get in touch with our selfish impulses so we can see them. And once we see them, then we're empowered to move away from them and beyond them and find ways to be a greater expression of peace and compassion in the world. That's what it's about. That's the liberating effect. That's the freedom, being free from our reactions that are caused when we take things personally and learn how to open up that space so that we become more compassionate. That's how it works. And it's a challenge. That's why I think a few of you were kind of laughing nervously out there, because it's a huge challenge for human beings because we each have an ego. The ego has this strong tendency. And actually, it's more than just a strong tendency. The ego can't do otherwise. The ego takes everything personally. For the ego, it's all about me. It's all about protecting that self-image that the ego has so carefully manufactured and built up over our entire lifetime. Why is it that people can remember some silly, embarrassing moment from third grade with crystal clarity, right down to every little detail, including exactly what the nun was wearing? Well, anyway, maybe I have no idea what that might be like, but maybe some of you do. You know, you're sitting there thinking, oh gosh, everyone must remember that time 30 years ago when I did this or that. That's a threat to our ego-driven self-image, and guess what? No one remembers it. Unless you blew up the principal's office with a pipe bomb or something like that. Yeah. No one remembers it. I'm not that important. What I did or didn't do 50 some odd years ago wasn't so memorable that everyone around me is going to remember it for the rest of their lives. But the ego will beg to differ, because to the ego it's all about me. Everyone around me lives to remember every little error and achievement that I made, no matter how long ago, and that's how the ego works. That's why it's so difficult to stop taking things personally. We carry the past with us. We react to the present. The truth is, all that stuff from the past, nobody remembers. It wasn't about you. Let it go. Isn't that a relief? What a relief. And if just on the off chance that there is someone out there who has been hanging on to a memory of some silly thing that we did 50 years ago, well, guess what? They've got their own ego-driven problems. And once again, it's not about you, it's about them and their process and the work that they need to do. Martha Graham was a renowned dancer and choreographer who's been called the Picasso of dance. And she was doing something new and revolutionary. And as you might expect, she had to endure a lot of unsolicited commentary and criticism, as do most artists who stretch and dare to do something different or take a risk. This is Martha Graham's advice to us. She says, what people in the world think of you is really none of your business. So we turn that around. What people think of me is none of my business. It's not about me. It's about them. And that's none of my business. And it's bad enough when somebody makes a comment, a critical comment directly to us, but it gets even worse because the ego likes to guess and to imagine what somebody might be thinking about us. You know, some of you out there right now might be thinking, oh, I bet he's talking about me, you know. But that's what the ego wants. It projects and guesses. When somebody says something, we think, oh, are they talking about, could they be talking about me? That's the ego at work. The fact of the matter is, we don't know. The ego thinks it's a mind reader, but we really don't know. In the Four Agreements, Don Miguel Ruiz says this. He says, when we take something personally, we make the assumption, and that's for next week, don't assume things, but we make the assumption that they know what is in our world, and we try to impose our world on their world. Even when a situation seems so personal, even when others insult you directly, it has nothing to do with you. Their point of view comes from all the programming they received during domestication. Domestication is this wonderful word that the author of the Four Agreements uses to describe the way that we're programmed or conditioned during our childhood and our early adult years, and really it can be a never-ending process if we're asleep. We get conditioned and programmed constantly. We grow up measuring, we start out measuring everything we do or say or even think according to whether mommy and daddy will approve or disapprove. Later on, we have substitutes for mommy and daddy. We have our teachers, we have our peer group, we have our culture, and on and on. But the thing is, we learn early on to measure our self-worth by looking outside for validation. We learn that early on, and then we keep repeating the lesson. And once that message gets programmed into us, it is literally off to the races. Other great sages of the ages saw this too. In China, 4th century BC, the Taoist teacher Zhuangzi said it like this. He said, "The ambitious run day and night in pursuit of honors, constantly in anguish about the success of their plans, dreading the miscalculation that may wreck everything. Thus, they are alienated from themselves, exhausting their real life in service of the shadow created by their insatiable hope." Alienated from their true self because they're constantly looking externally for validation. When we know, as we teach in Unity, we are whole, perfect, and complete just the way we are. That's the same thing that the Buddha saw at the moment of his enlightenment, that everyone is whole, perfect, and complete, just the way we are. And yet, we keep looking outside of us, and we end up alienated and exhausted. That's what they're saying there. One of the biggest ways we exhaust ourselves, or another way that I've put it, a big way that we leak energy, is by taking things personally. Taking everything personally. Don Miguel says that when we take things personally, we are secretly agreeing with what the other person is saying. We are accepting their gift of poison and letting it create what he calls a dream of hell. Even when life is good, even when we've had a great performance, a great concert, or you do a great talk or whatever, why is it that we always hang on to that one little maybe negative comment that we hear, or maybe that one little mistake that we might have made during the course of this big long process? That's what we hang on to. That's what we remember. And sometimes it's not so careless because, believe it or not, there are some people who do this kind of stuff intentionally. There are people out there who actually try to get under our skin or inside our heads. They want us to take whatever they have to say very personally. Here's another line from the Four Agreements. He says, they can hook you easily with one little opinion and feed you whatever poison they want. And because you take it personally, you eat it up. They dangle the bait, we take it personally, and the next thing you know, we're hooked. We're hooked, just like a fish on the line. Ever wonder why people feel the need to do that, to dangle the bait and try to hook us, to try to get us to take things personally? It's because of their own emotional garbage. They have a sense of insecurity, so they think that they have to constantly be on the offensive. They have to tear you down so maybe they can feel a little more secure or a little better about themselves. So what they do basically is they take their emotional garbage, they arrange it nicely on a plate, they present it to you, and when you take it personally, what you're saying to the world is, thank you, may I please have some more? That's what's going on. This morning I'm going to introduce you to one of my favorite movie characters of all time from a somewhat obscure movie called The Big Lebowski, which is one of those quirky Coen brothers movies that starred Jeff Bridges. Jeff Bridges plays this very laid-back character who is simply known as the Dude. Here's the Dude. He's the man for that time and place. He fits right in there. That's the way he goes around during most of the movie. Very laid back. He wears a t-shirt, shorts, a bathrobe, sandals, sometimes sunglasses. His favorite pastime is bowling. So one day before the big bowling tournament, he's an avid league bowler. Before the big bowling tournament, the Dude is with his buddies at the bowling alley practicing, and his bowling nemesis is going after him, doing some trash talking. There's his nemesis there, getting in his face, and I really can't even come close here to repeating the actual language that he's using in that scene. So I will give you a rough and civilized translation of what he's saying. What he's saying is, Mr. Dude, you're not a very skilled bowler, and my team is going to beat you decisively during the upcoming tournament. That's essentially what it amounts to. Yeah. It's a lot more colorful. I can't do it. So, in response to this attempt at a beatdown, the Dude delivers the best comeback of all time. Here he is, and he says, he just stays all laid back, and he says, yeah, well, you know, that's just like your opinion, man. That's it. That's just like your opinion, man. The dude knows how not to take things personally. The Dude knows that the best way to deal with trash talk is to simply abide. The Dude abides. And that's kind of an archaic word, abide. It's an archaic word that simply means to wait patiently for something, or to endure without yielding, or to simply accept without objection. The reason the Dude is so good at abiding and not taking anything personally is because he meditates. He does Tai Chi. The Dude practices mindfulness. And it's really interesting. Here's a great example of synchronicity. Karen was doing some reading this week, and she came across an article that was just posted on March 10th at the UC Berkeley website about how practicing mindfulness, and she led you in a mindfulness exercise this morning during the meditation based on that article, practicing mindfulness can lead to greater and healthier self-esteem. Now, imagine that, just in time for this talk, the study comes out, right? The thing is that people with low self-esteem have a tendency, don't you think, with low self-esteem, we're going to look outside for validation. It's obviously not coming from within, so we're going to look outside for validation, and that means we have a much greater tendency to take things personally. We're easy to hook when we're suffering from low self-esteem. So this study found 4 ways that mindfulness practice can help us with self-esteem. And I'm talking about healthy self-esteem. Sometimes people, they equate self-esteem with unhealthy pride. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about self-esteem, which means that we are aware of our own worthiness and we find it within, the power within. This is the kind of practice that can help us to stop looking outside for validation, which means it'll help us to stop taking things personally. All right, first, in the process of, here's the article. I just want to prove to you, it says March 10th up there, 2014. And the first way that we can use mindfulness to help us, the first way is that by labeling internal experiences with words, we learn how to avoid getting consumed by self-critical thoughts and emotions. The first thing you learn in meditation and mindfulness practice is how to simply label a thought or label a sensation without getting caught up in a story about it and all of the emotions that can arise when we get caught up in the stories we like to tell about things. The second way is that practicing a non-judgmental attitude towards thoughts and emotions helps us to have a neutral, accepting attitude toward the self. That's the next big thing that we learn in meditation, is how to be with whatever's happening without clinging to it or pushing it away. A non-judgmental attitude means we don't cling to it, we don't push things away. We abide. We're not attached, which empowers us to not take things personally. Third, by sustaining attention on the present moment, that helps us to avoid becoming caught up in self-critical thoughts that relate to events from the past, like we were talking about, or projecting it into the future. Regular practice is what helps us to stay present and centered, which is one of the best ways to learn how to let go of those old memories of the past, those past mistakes. Remember that it isn't about me. And remember that we have the power so that they don't seem to keep coming back to haunt us. And finally, we learn how to let thoughts and emotions enter and leave our awareness without reacting to them. In other words, not taking things personally. Regular practice helps us to learn how to short-circuit the ego, because the ego, again, is programmed to take everything personally. And when I say that it's programmed, I mean it's just like software, especially the kind that's running in the background. You know what I'm talking about here? Sometimes people will take a computer to the technician because it's running so slowly, and they are astounded when the technician puts up a screen like this that shows us how much garbage is running in the background and getting in the way and slowing everything down. So mindfulness is like running a computer cleanup tool. We get to decide what programs are going to run in the background. So I want to finish this morning with just a little word of caution. Not taking things personally doesn't mean not taking responsibility. If I'm in school and I get a D on a term paper, I'm not going to send a note back to the teacher saying, well, you know, that's just like your opinion, man. That's not how to use this skill. I might say that to myself as a reminder to not take the criticism personally, because, as we know, taking something personally can lead to an emotional charge, and that's really the problem. The emotional charge gets in the way of our objectivity. It gets in the way of our discernment. I want my discernment process to be as open and objective and honest as possible so that I can take that D and any comment that might be on that paper so that I can take it for what it is. It is simply feedback. It is simply information that may or may not be useful to me. But I have to be in that state of openness and awake, mindful awareness so that I can truly make an objective decision as to whether this information that is coming to me is something useful or not useful. So that is a way to liberation, to be free from those programs running in the background, to be free from that emotional charge that comes when we take things personally so that we are open and more spacious and more receptive. And believe it or not, my friends, that is what Lent is really all about. See you next week.